Gemara in Bavli and Megillah in Daf Lamed Aleph. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. In all places in which you find God's glory, God's strength, there you find His humility. This matter was taught in the Torah, repeated in the prophets, and repeated a third time in the writings. The pasuk in Devarim, va'adunei adunim, uksiv basrei, and immediately following it, osa mishpat yasom ba'almana, that God fulfills all the needs of the orphan and the widow. Shonoi banavim, we repeated in the prophets, ko amar ram ben Isa, pasuk in Yeshayahu, shochein ad, he dwells on high, uksiv basrei ve'esdaka ushfal ruach, and he tends to the lowly of spirit. Mishulash baksuvim, repeated a third time in the writings, as it says in Tehillim Sameches, Solu laroche ba'aravos b'yashemo, make way for the one who rides in the heavens. Uksiv basrei, and it says immediately following it, Avi yisomim with dayan almanos, that God who is the father of orphans and who judges the widows. In the progression of the last parashas of Sefer Shemos, we find a very, very interesting pattern. There's a theme that's emphasized very, very powerfully and begins in the beginning, in the middle rather, of Parashat Tisa, and flows all the way through the end of the Sefer. And that is the idea of, it's a dichotomy really. It's a dichotomy of being face to face with HaKadosh Baruch Hu versus being concealed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Face to face versus being concealed. We find in Parshas Kisisa in what in my opinion is the most blatant contradiction in the entire Torah. And it's so blatant for two reasons. First of all, it deals with a subject that is quite heavy. And the second reason is that it's in such close proximity to each other. So Moshe Rabbeinu hears first about the transgression of the Jewish people with the Egel. God tells him, Lech reid ki sheches amcha, go down from the mountain because the nation that you have taken out of Mitzrayim has sinned. So Moshe goes down. He has to tend immediately to the damage control, so to speak. He destroys the Egel. He has the Levite enforcers go around and deal with a bunch of people initially. And the result of the fact that the Jewish people sinned is that Moshe has to take his special tent, his Ohel Moed, the Ohel Moed that will turn into the Mikdash, or the Kodesh Kadoshim specifically. The Ohel Moed becomes the Kodesh HaKadoshim, meaning there was the Ohel Moed before, but after the Mishkan is erected, so the Ohel Moed becomes the epicenter of this Mishkan. So as a result of this Cheta Egel, the Ohel Moed needs to be removed from the Machane. Vayaket Seis Moshe, this is from Perek Lamed Gimel Pasuk Ches. Vayaket Seis Moshe la Ohel Yakumu Kol Ha'am. When Moshe would need to go speak to God, he would have to leave the camp, and everyone would watch him leave. Vayakva Moshe ha'ohela yered amud ha'anan. When Moshe would go into the tent, so the cloud of glory would descend in the opening. V'diber Hashem el Moshe panim el panim. God would speak to Moshe face to face. Ka'asher yidaber ish el re'ehu, like a man speaks to his friend. Just in the same way that you bump into someone in the street and you're looking at them face to face and you have a conversation, in that same manner Moshe Rabbeinu would speak to God. V'shav el hamachaneh, and then when he was done, only when he was done with that interaction, would he come back to the camp. So that ends that section. That's from Pasuk Ches through Pasuk Yud Aleph. Now, Pasuk Yud Beis, which happens to be the beginning of Shlishi, by the way, just an easy reference to remember. Vayomer Moshe al Hashem. Now Moshe goes back to God to try to do more damage control. He at least destroys the initial source of the problem. He destroys the egel, and he gets rid of the instigators of the egel business. Now he needs to go and seek complete as much forgiveness as possible for the egel incident. Listen, you're the one who came to me, God, and told me to go take the people out, and I acquiesced to your request. Let me know your ways. Let me know your ways. And I will know you. In order so that I can find favor in you. Vayomar, and God responds, okay, my face will come with you and guide you through the desert. Vayomar love, Moshe turns back and retorts again. He emphasizes, I want the panim. If your panim are not going with us, then don't bother. Meaning, I'm only doing this on condition that your panim are with us through this whole experience. That which you requested from me, I will do. What did Moshe request? What was the thing that Moshe requested? Moshe asked, tell me your ways. All this will be explained in a moment, but just to follow the progression for a minute, okay? Moshe asks, tell me your ways. And God says, that I'll do. And immediately afterwards, Moshe goes another request. He says, I'm on a roll here. God is answering my requests. First I asked for forgiveness, then I asked for him to tell me his ways, and he said yes to both, so I'll add another question. Vayomar, harini na es kvodecha. Show me your kavod. Vayomer. And God responds, Ani avir kol tuvi al panecha. I will bring all of my goodness before you. V'karasi b'shem Hashem lefanecha, and I will call out in the name of God. God will call out in the name of God, which is already should trigger some questions. But he says, I will call out in the name of God before you. V'chanos es asher achon, and I will give grace unto those that deserve it. V'ayah ba'avor kavodi v'samticha minikras hatzur. And when my kavod, meaning the thing that you just requested, for me to show you my kavod, when my kavod comes before you, v'sakosi chapi alecha ad avri. But I'll have to put my hand over you that you won't see the full picture. V'hasirosi eskapi v'ra'isa esachorai, and then only once I'm further, once I've moved along, I will remove my hand. V'ra'isa esachorai, but you'll only see the back of me. Ufonai lo yera'u, but you will not be able to see my face. Ki lo yir'ani ha'adam v'chai, because no living man can see my face. Do you see the stira in the course of 3 lines, the biggest stira ever? It says that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to God face to face in the same manner that you speak to your friend in the street. You see your friend face to face. Moshe spoke in this manner. Moshe makes an explicit request. He says, listen, I'm doing this on condition that your panim comes with us. And initially God seems to go with the request. Okay, yes, I'll acquiesce to that part. But then Hashem says, no, explicitly, Fonai lo yera'u, you can't see my face. Not only can you not see my face, lo yirani ha'adam v'chai, no man can see my face. No man can see my face and live. So what is going on? What is going on? Let's try to unpack this as best as we possibly can. The Rambam in the Moreh. Thank you. In Perek Aleph, Chelek Aleph, Perek Nun Daled. Da ki Adon Hanaviyim Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Shalom bikesh shtei bakashos. Moshe in this interaction between God and Moshe in this parsha, he requested 2 requests. Uvasu atshuva ali shtei bakashos, and God answered both of the requests explicitly. Abakasha ha'achas hi bakasho mimenu yizbarach shiodieu atzmo va'amitoso. That God should reveal His essence and the truth of His nature. V'habakasha ha'shenis v'hi asher bikesh tchila, which is a strange lashon. I'm not exactly sure what the syntax is. Probably something in Arabic. But he says the second request, which is what he asked first. So again, I'm not sure exactly what that means. But basically, there's 2 requests. Shodieu ta'arav, that God should reveal His character traits. So the one request was that God should reveal His essence, and the other one is that He should reveal His character traits. Ve'yeshivo yizbarach al shtei ha'she'elos, and God answered him on both of these. Ta'arav, His characteristics, hainu pe'ulosav, God's actions in the world. V'hodio, and God told him, Ki atzmo lo yusag lefi mashahu, that his essence cannot be grasped. Shu'eiro al makom iyun, yasig mimenu tachlis ma she'efshar la'adam she'esigeu. But he said, I will show you the maximum amount, that which can be shown for a man to comprehend. What is this referring to? God says, I'll bring my kavod before you. But while my kavod's there, I have to put my hand over you, so to speak. And only once I'm far enough away will I remove my hand so you can see the back of my face. That's what's being alluded to. Omnam, however, bakasho yidias ta'arav, that which Moshe requested, that God should explain to him his characteristics, his actions in the world. Hein be'omro hodieni na es derachecha, your ways. Bi'istakel ma shenichnas tachazeh amar minyanim niflaim. See what was written in the psukim in response to these wondrous things, says the Rambam. Mora al mi she'odah ha'eloka hu asher yimtzachen be'inav lo mi she'yatzum bi'yispalel levad aval kol mi she'yoduhu hu hanirtzah ha'mekurav. What is being told over here is that the one who God has chen, God says, I will give grace, I will give chen to those who deserve chen. He says it's not the person who sits in prayer in front of God, but rather the one who puts in the effort to know God's ways, to know the drachim. That's the one that God has chen for. What are the drachim that God reveals to Moshe Rabbeinu? What are these drachim? As the Rambam himself goes on to explain, that which Chazal refer to as the Yud Gimel Midos Harachamim in the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, right? These 13 attributes of mercy, Hashem, Keil, Rachum, Mechanun. Those are the drachim that are revealed to Moshe. But the panim cannot be revealed. The panim can't be revealed. Just to sharpen this distinction between the drachim and the kavod, or as the Rambam says, God's ways and God's essence. Oh, we didn't get the Rambam Hilchos Sodei Torah. I'm just going to quote the Rambam from Hilchos Sodei Torah Baal Peh. I promise you it's there. It's in Perek Vav Halacha Zayin. The Rambam says, it's in Perek Zayin Halacha Vav. The Rambam says the following: Kol ma shenisbar midarkei hanavua, all that which we have described over here in the manner of prophecy, harehu b'shar hanavim, all of which we have described is in all the other prophets. Aval nevuas Moshe Rabbeinu. However, the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu is different. It is different in two ways. First, says the Rambam, Shar hanavim kiblu es nevuaseim b'chalom. They would receive their prophecy in a dream. The Moshe Rabbeinu Moshe Rabbeinu would receive his prophecy awake. How do we know? Because there's a pasuk in Parashat Tisa. Ubavo Moshe el Ohel Moed. Moshe would calmly and casually walk into the Ohel Moed and receive prophecy. He wouldn't collapse on the floor in some type of epileptic fit and start receiving prophecy. He would calmly walk into the tent and boom, receive prophecy. Okay? Kol shar hanavim b'mashal ubechida. The second distinction is that the other prophets would receive their prophecy in an allegory and in a metaphor. The Moshe Rabbeinu, b'tachlis habehirus, Moshe Rabbeinu would receive prophecy in complete clarity. How do we know? Another pasuk from Parashat Tisa. V'diber Hashem mi Moshe, panim el panim ka'asher yidaber ish al re'eim. When you bump into your friend in the street and you have a conversation, you're not speaking in tongues. You're not giving metaphors to each other. That's not how you speak to it. It's not normal conversation. You say what you mean. There's a clarity in the exchange. That's what it means, panim el panim. That you don't have to speak in metaphor. Metaphor, why do you use a metaphor? Why do you use a mashal? Why do you use a mashal? You use a mashal when the person is not capable of understanding what it is that you're trying to tell him. So you have to borrow from something else that he does understand. And that the connection between the thing that he does understand and the thing that you're trying and the thing that you're trying to communicate, that connection will hopefully push it over the edge, so to speak. But when you have clarity, when there's already clarity, you don't need a mashal. The mashal is only to connect between that which you're trying to communicate and that which the person is capable of understanding. But Moshe didn't need that. He had the panim el panim. Moshe was fully conscious and there was complete clarity in the prophecy. And this was the panim el panim, the face that Moshe was able to understand. This clarity of the drachav, the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As the Ram says, ta'arav u'pu'olosav, God's characteristics and the manner in which he conducts himself in the world. However, the kavod, on that God says, Ki lo yirani ha'adam v'chai, no man can see my face and live. As the Gemara in Brachos says, What was the underlying, the implicit, or perhaps not so implicit, maybe explicit, request that Moshe was asking? To reveal, excuse me, to reveal tzaddik v'ralo v'rasha v'tovlo. Explain to me why it is that righteous people suffer and wicked people have it good. That's God's essence. To understand that is understanding God's essence. Or to distill this down to the most potent way possible, the distinction between knowing God's presence, knowing and being aware of God's presence, drachav u'pu'ulosav, that's God's presence, and being aware of God's calculations. God's calculation is inherently inaccessible. It's not, right? And just to be clear, when the pasuk says "Ki lo yirani ha'adam v'chai," that no man can see me and live, it's not saying, like some like Lahavdil, we have like these characters in the pagan pantheons, these beings that if you look at them, right, you die of fear, right? Like the Medusa and what's the snake in Harry Potter, the thing with the basilisk, exactly. You look at it and you're gone, right? We have some Buckies here, Baruch Hashem. It's not saying that. It's not saying that the result of looking at this thing is death. That's not what it's saying. That's not what it's saying. It's saying that by definition, if you exist, that means that you have a separation from the divine essence. Because if you didn't have a separation from the divine essence, you wouldn't exist as an independent being. That's what that means. There is a necessary break between your consciousness and the divine source of consciousness that allows you to exist. Lo yirani ha'adam v'chai, the living man cannot see me. Because if you did see me, you would cease to exist. You wouldn't exist independently. This is what's being said. I just want to continue. Just one. It's a shame that I closed this. The Rambam continues in the Parak Mem Daled, the same thing, the same Parak, where he goes to explain the pasuk Ani avir kol tuvi al panecha. Kol tuvi, says the Rambam, hu remez laharos oso hanimtzaim kulam. God told him when he said, I will show you all of my good. What does that mean, I'll show you all of my good? I will show you the full spectrum of all of creation. Hanem aleim, that which it says about them, vayar alim es kol asher asa, v'hinei tov me'od. What is God's goodness? It's the creation. The physical, material creation. Ratzoni lomar, bahar os osam lo sheyasig tiv'am v'hikashram ktsasam b'ktsas. To show him the full spectrum of every single one of the individual creations and how they are connected, each one to the other. V'yeda hanhagaso, and he will know the manner of their behavior and conduct. Echi bechlal ubiprat, at the individual level and how they integrate into the collective. So Moshe Rabbeinu is shown in this prophecy. He is shown the full spectrum of all of existence and how each one of the pieces of that existence interact in this infinitely complex web with each other. That's the kol tuvi. And that's the trigger for the shalosh esrei midos harachamim. That is the shalosh esrei midos harachamim. Rachamim, which I think we've spoken on in other contexts. Rachamim milashon rechem. Rechem, what does that mean? Rechem means God is the womb in which the world exists. It provides space for the world to be nourished and come into being and constantly be regenerated every moment. Mechadesh p'tuvo b'chol yom tomid ma'aseh v'reishis. And Moshe Rabbeinu is shown the full nature of this reality. How all of the creation, every single piece of creation are intricately interconnected in an infinitely complex web. And that is the Giloi, the revelation of the Shalosh Esrei Midos HaRachamim. When we say in this Gemara that we started off with in the Bavli, every time you see God's strength, you see His humility, and it brings three proofs for this, and they're all talking about the same thing: that God is, incredibly mighty, but he tends to the weak. He tends to the small people. Right? Something to do with Yisomim and Almanos, something, right? The people that are the most weak in society. So if you were to say to someone, we translate anava as humility, right? Which is not a particularly accurate translation. If you would say, that guy, he takes care of all the orphans, he's very humble. You say maybe he's very kind, very magnanimous. You say he's humble. Humble in our lexicon, humble means not being a pompous jerk. That's what that means. Don't be arrogant. That's what humble means. Anava is something else. As the Maharal says in Nesiv HaAnava, in Nesiv HaZolam, the baseline of Anava is, and all it is, and this is just the pshat of the Bavli that we read. In fact, he brings this Bavli as a proof. All Anava is the ability to be fully, cognizantly aware that other things exist outside of you. That's all it is. To the extent that a person is aware of existence outside of himself, that is the extent of his Anava. Do you understand how HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by definition, is the most Anav? How could there be any more Anav? If all of reality exists within HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is potently aware of every single point of reality at all the time, by definition HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the most Anav. What's the next step, Rabbi Osai? Who's also in this story? Moshe Rabbeinu, who is Anav Mikol Adam, because he's also shown a glimpse of this. He's also shown every single facet of reality, v'his kashrusam ktsasam b'ktsas, b'chlal u'b'prat, at the individual level and integrated into the whole. He's shown this. If you had a glimpse of one moment that you were aware of the heartbeat of every single one of the 8 billion people on the planet, what impact would that have on you? What impact would that have on your consciousness? You would not have any remnant of arrogance would be burned from your soul immediately in that one moment. Because it's that awareness. And this is the definition of Anava, that God is Ram Benisa, Shochein Ad, he's dwelling on high, infinitely high, but he deals with the lowest possible thing. Because from God's perspective, Perush, the perspective from everywhere, the view from everywhere, that's God's view. Where's God's view? It's the view from everywhere, all at once. From that view, there's no distinction between infinitely high and infinitely low. It's all the same. There's no difference. This concept, Rabbi Osai, where's the Gemara in Gittin? This concept, Rabbi Osai, it has strong implications lahalacha. I know that you're all big lamdanim over here, so I have to connect these mystical concepts to a little bit more grounded stuff that's relevant to all of you. The Gemara in Gittin in the fourth parak, it's where the halachas of pruzbul are discussed. The pruzbul is a contract that allows a person to give over all of the debts that he's owed to the domain of Beis Din, and they're not canceled by the 7th year. So there's all these different technicalities of how a person writes up such a contract and makes sure that it goes through. So the Gemara says the following: Yisomim, orphans, einam zakukim lepruzbul. They do not need to write a pruzbul. And as Rashi explains, on all of the shtarei chov, on all of the debts that their father was owed before he passed away, so the Yisomim inherit, the orphans can collect those debts. The Yisomim don't need to write a pruzbul on those debts. Why not? Says the Gemara, Ki Rabban Gamliel ubeis dino avihem shel Yisomim. They're the father of the Yisomim. You understand how this is borrowed from that pasuk in Tehillim Samaches that's describing God's humility? This is describing God's humility. That God rides in the heavens, Rochev ba'aravos, va'avi Yisomim, and he's also the father of the orphans. Beis Din is meant to act this out. We are meant to act out this quality of being the father of the orphans. The Rambam in Hilchos Nachlos in Perek Yud learns from this Gemara the obligation for Beis Din to be Mamid Apotropos. All of the sugyas that we find in Shas about how Beis Din appoints a guardian for Yisomim, this is learned from this. The Beis Din has to appoint an apotropos, has to appoint a guardian for the Yisomim, because Beis Din is Aviem Shel Yisomim. It's also brought in Choshen Mishpon and Simon Reish Tzadi if you want to add another makor. So this is the idea to act out this quality, to act out the anivos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The humility, again, it's not It's not right to say humility, but this is what true humility is. True humility is to the extent that we are aware of the full spectrum of reality. And again, by definition, no one can have awareness of the full spectrum of reality more than God, but we can get pretty high. We can get pretty far. We can get as far as Moshe Rabbeinu requested. Moshe Rabbeinu requested 2 requests. He said, show me your drachim, show me your kavod. God says, the drachim I can tell you, the kavod I can't tell you. It's too high. You can get all the way up to the kavod, you can get all the way up to the drachim, but the kavod you can't go up to. This awareness, the Shalosh Esrei Harachamim, this awareness of God's anivus is the highest possible hasaga, the highest possible grasp of human consciousness that's possible. That's a tremendous thing. That's really a tremendous thing. And we get closer to that by acting out these qualities of avihem shel yesomim, of being the father of the downtrodden. You want to know how to acquire God's anivus? This is how you do it. You act out the avihem shel yesomim. That's how you do it.
Mahu
rachum v'chanun. Yes. Huh? Yeah.
That's one of the
V'shamati ki chanun oni. And what is that said in the context of? Don't be mean to these people because they're going to cry out to me and I'm going to hear and then you're going to be in trouble. Okay? Just to switch just a little bit to the other side of this, right? So we understand to what extent we can grasp. But there is explicitly, very explicitly, a place where it cannot be grasped. And this is the other form of panim. One form of panim, just to summarize so it's as clear as possible. There's a type of panim that Moshe can access. As it says, V'tiber panim el panim, he spoke face to face. But there's another panim that's not accessible. As God says, you can't see my face. You can't see it. One is the drachim. The drachim, the face of the drachim can be accessed. The face of the kavod can't be accessed. So I want to explore this idea just briefly. What does this mean? What is the necessity that there is this place called panim that cannot be accessed? So I'm quoting from the Bavli in Nedarim on Daf Lamed Ches. Chamishim Sha'arei Bina. There were, Amud Aleph. No, I was right, Amud Beis. Chamishim Sha'arei Bina. There are 50 gates of understanding. Okay? 50 gates of understanding. V'chulam nimsru l'Moshe, and all of them were given over to Moshe Rabbeinu, chutz me'achas, except for one. Which one? Okay. Chulam nitin l'Moshe chasar achas. Shene'emar, as it says in the pasuk in Tehillim, Batachserehu ma'at me'elohim. That he lost a little bit just below God. Okay? That's what the Bavli says. 50 Sha'arei Bina, all of them were given to Moshe except for one. This already it should remind us of this conversation between Moshe and God. That Moshe is asking to go as high as he can go, and God says you can go here, you can't go beyond there. Okay. What is the nature of these memtes Sha'arei Bina? The 50 gates that you can that he got all of them except one. So where the Bavli is so soon, the Yerushalmi gives us a little bit more insight. The Bavli in Sanhedrin in Perek Daled Halacha Beis. Mishnah says, Dini Mamanus Matin al pi echad bein l'schus bein l'chova. How do you determine the halacha in a din Torah by Mamanus? By one judge. If there are 7 judges on the panel, if you have 4 that say yes and 3 that say no, then the answer is yes. One judge can determine the difference. However, when it's a capital case, you can let the guy off with the majority of 1, but you can only convict the guy with a majority of 2. That's the Mishnah. Says the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai says, one of the Chachmei Eretz Yisrael was a Talmud Chaver of Rabbi, one of the Rabbanim of Rabbi Yochanan. Ilu nitna Torah chatucha lo haisa lo regel amida. If the Torah was given chatucha, meaning like lachtoches halacha, if the Torah was given in the form of explicit halachos, we would not have a leg to stand on. Now already that's the most counterintuitive statement that you would say. No, if the Torah was given more clarity, then we would be in a better position. He said, no, if the Torah was given with explicit Piskei Halacha, we would not have a leg to stand on. Matam vayidaber Hashem el Moshe, Omar lefonav. God said to Moshe, Moshe said to God, Ribono shel olam, hodieni heachi ha'alacha. Tell me what the halacha is. Don't tell me all of these like general principles and rules and lumdus stuff. I just want to know what the halacha is. Amar lo, God responded to him, Achrei rabim la'atos. The best I can do for you is to tell you that you have to go figure it out on a panel of judges and you go after the majority. Rabba Mazachin Zachu. If most of the people let him off, then he's Zocha. Rabba Amachayvin, if most of them convict, Chayvu, he's Chayev. Kidei, says God, Shetia HaTorah Nidreshes, Mem Tes Panim Tameh, Mem Tes Panim Tahor. 49 ways to purify and 49 ways to contaminate. Minayan, how do we know this? Says the Gemara, how do we know that that the Torah is darshaned 49 ways in one direction and 49 ways in another direction? Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, V'diglu olai ahava. V'diglu. Diglu, gematria memtes. V'chein hu omer, imros Hashem, imros tohoros. The speech of God are pure. Kesef tsaruf ba'alil la'aretz, which has been purified before the earth, mizukak shivasayim, and rendered pure 7/7. What's 7/7? Oh, a bunch of math geniuses, Baruch Hashem. Right? 7/7, 49. What's going on, Rabbosai? What's going on? When the Gemara says, when the Bavli says, when Chazal say that there are 50 Sha'arei Bina, or 50 Sha'arei Bina, we're not saying that there are 50 Sha'arei Bina and there's like a checklist of all the 50, and here I got the 16th one, now I got the 27th one, and now I got the 33rd one. That's not what's going on. Mem, Tes, and 50, both of these numbers, are not numbers of things. They're expressing paradigms. What's the paradigm of 49? The paradigm of 49 is the full spectrum of all possibility. That's what 49 means. We see throughout nature that a spectrum is 7. There are 7 days of the week, there are seven colors in the spectrum, 7 notes on the scale. Seven, and also already in Kisvei HaKodesh we see that a spectrum is 7. So if you have a spectrum of 7, and you make all the permutations of those possible 7, meaning you exponentialize the possibilities, that's represented by 7 times 7, which is 49. Again, it's not that there's 49 options. It could be many more than 49 options, or many less than 49 options. It doesn't matter. The number 49 represents, what it's trying to say is that it's the full spectrum of possibility. That's 49. And the 50th is the understanding how all of those possibilities are subsumed in inseparable unity. That's what the 50th is. So when the Bavli says that there were 49 Sha'arei Bina and all of them were given to Moshe except for one, what that's saying is that all of the possibilities were shown to Moshe. He was able to grasp that in his wisdom. But how all of those possibilities were contained in a unified one, that wasn't shown to him. That wasn't shown to him. As it says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, listen, I don't want to know all the possibilities. Just tell me what to do. Just tell me the halacha. And God says, no, I'm intentionally not telling you the halacha. I'm not telling you the halacha on purpose, because I want you to go through all the possibilities. That's your avoda. Your avoda is to go through all the possibilities. Sit in Beis Din, work it out. You know what the word Sanhedrin means, Rabbi Osai? Sanhedrin is a Greek word. You know what it means? Sanhedrin means to sit together. That's what it means. To sit together. I want you to sit together and work it out. That's your avoda. If I would tell you the answer, then there would be no work for you to do. This is the tachsereu me'at me'elohim, the gap that's between you and God. You asked to see my essence, my kavod. I can't let you see my kavod. If I showed you my kavod, you wouldn't exist. I want you to exist. I want you to be your own person. I want you to be your independent being. That's why I made a gap between us, that you can't see my face. If I showed you my face, there'd be nothing for you to do. Your work is in the mem tes panim lakan, mem tes panim lakan. That's the diglu olai ahava. Through that paradigm, you can express your love for me. You can bring yourself to the table with the mem tes panim. If I showed you the 50th, then why would I have to create the world? I already know the answer. I created you so you can show me your answer. That's why you're here. the panim el panim is indeed achievable, Rabbosai. Just as it says, v'diber panim el panim. It can be shown by communing with the midos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the drachav of fu'ulosav, as the Rambam says. By acting out the avi yisomim, the dayan almonos, we can reach a hasaga of the anivos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the awareness of the full spectrum of the bria, tov me'od, the full impact of goodness of reality, and understand how every single prat is kashur and inextricably bound and interdependent on all the other pratim and integrated together in a wholeness. We can grasp that. We can grasp that. But the ultimate answer is intentionally removed from us. Because if it wasn't removed from us, then there'd be nothing for us to do. There'd be no reason for us to traverse through the world. Rabosai, the Egel Hazav, as we mentioned last week, is called an Egel Masecha. It's called the Egel of the mask. And this theme of the mask repeats itself from the beginning, from that story, all throughout the end of the Sefer. The Masach. First of all, God comes to them and says, right, after the Egel, Elohei Masecha lo ta'aseh lecha. Remember, don't make any more idol masks. Idol masks are not good. There shouldn't be a mask between me and you. We should have panim el panim. When Moshe Rabbeinu comes back down from the mountain, the whole reason why they needed to build the Egel to begin with is because they were freaked out that Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't coming back on time. When Moshe comes down from the mountain, what does he have to do? He has to cover his face with a mask. Think about that. The entire Midbar story, Moshe Rabbeinu was walking around with a mask. It's unbelievable. You think about that. For 40 years, Moshe Rabbeinu can't show his face. He's walking around with a mask. The reason that the people built the mask to begin with, built the Egel Masecha, is because Moshe, they were scared that Moshe wasn't coming back to take care of them, and now Moshe's wearing a mask. And as we spoke about last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago now, that this was the need for Moshe Rabbeinu to be ultimately separated from the Jewish people, because he was facilitating this cycle of fear and putting up a mask. The Mishkan itself, as we will see, right, throughout these parshios of Vayakal and Pekudei, the Mishkan is built of a bunch of what? Masachim. Masachim. Mosach, Pesach, Shar, Hechatzer. Masach ha'oel, Masach ha'Pesach. Everything's Masach. When you listen to the Kriyas HaTorah on Shabbos, just see how many times the word Masach comes up. The Mishkan is built of Masachim. That's what it's built from. But the Masach could be a Masach of the Egel, Chalila, of the Egel that makes us completely separate from the awareness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Or it could be the Masach that's the necessary Masach. Ki lo yirani ha'adam v'chai. That there is a Masach that separates me and you so that there can be a dialogue between us. If there's no separation, there's no dialogue possible. I'm going to end off on the Mishnah in Avos. We had the... Yeah, you gave it to me. Mishnah and Avos. Okay? We're going to put on our diocats now, okay? So just listen to the words very carefully. Listen to the words. Rabbi Chalafta ish kfar Chananya omer. Asar sheyoshvin ve'oskin b'Torah. 10 people that are sitting and studying Torah together. Shechina shruya beinehem. The divine presence dwells between them. Shneimar, as it says in the pasuk in Tehillim, Elohim nitzav ba'adas el. That God dwells in the congregation of the Lord. Uminayin afilu chamisha. And how do we know that even 5? How do we know that even 5 what? How do we know that even 5? What? 5 people what? Learning Torah. That the Shechina, right? The Shechina dwells between them. Shechina beineim. That was the first part of the sentence. Yeah. Minayin afilu chamisha shechina beineim. Okay. Shneimar ba'agudaso al eretz yisada. That God is also in His bundle, and the bundle is only 5, as we know from also by the Ezov, right? Agudas Ezov is 5. Uminayin afilu shlosha. And how do we know that even 3? Even 3 what? Even 3 people that are learning Torah. Had the Shechina beineim. Very good. We're on a roll, right? They're only the smart people in Takotel, right? Afilu shlosha. Shneimar bekerev Elohim yishpot. That God dwells amongst those who are judging. And as we know, a Beis Din, the minimum number for a Beis Din is 3. Uminayin afilu shnaim. And how do we know that even 2? How do we know that even 2 what? People that are studying Torah. The Shechina is between them. Shenemar az nidbru yirei Hashem pasuk from Malachi ish el re'ehu, a man to his friend, vayakshev Hashem vayishma, and God will hear what they are discussing, vayichtov b'sefer, etc. Uminayan afilu echad, and where do we know that even one? Where do we know that even one what?
One guy that's learning has the Shekhinah.
Shechina beineim.
Right into that one.
It just says B'nayim?
No, it doesn't say beineim.
I didn't say
Minayin afilu echad what? Minayin afilu chamisha shechina beineim. Minayin afilu shlosha shechina beineim. Shnayim shechina beineim. Echad shechina beineim. Who's the beineim? Between who? Between who? Shechina beineim, shenemar, as it says in the pasuk in Shemos, b'chol makom asher azkiras shemi, in any place where I will mention my name, avo elecha uverachticha, I will come and I will bless you. The pasuk, the Midrash Rabbah in Shir Hashirim says, slightly cryptically, HaKadosh Baruch Hu liban shel Yisrael, that God is the heart of the Jewish people. The heart of the Jewish people. Very, very often throughout Kisvei HaKodesh, we find allusions to the fact. We find allusions to people praying and switching almost seamlessly between the second or third, but the second and first person. The second and first person. At one point, it seems like they're speaking to someone who's in front of them, and then they start speaking to themselves. They just go back and forth. I'll give you a really, really good example. It's a pasuk that we all know. And then from the end of Tehillim Chaf, right? It's Tehillim Chaf. L'cha amar libi bakshu fonai. Just try to translate that sentence. L'cha, to you, amar libi, my heart says, bakshu ponai, seek out my face. Es ponecha Hashem avakesh, I will seek out your face, God. Your face, God. Yes, the pasuk is quoting from the song. Yes, right.
Exactly.
What does that even mean? To you, my heart is saying, "Seek out my face." In any other language, that syntax, even you could say, even in Hebrew, the syntax doesn't make sense. What does that mean? What that means is, Rabbosai, what that means is that there is a dual function going on in our relationship, quote unquote, in our dialogue with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. One form of that dialogue is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is outside of us, looking at us face to face. That's one paradigm of the dialogue. But the other form of that dialogue is that there's a voice coming from within your own consciousness, from within your own heart, that is God. It's L'cha amar libi, your own heart. It's like it's a voice welling up from inside of you. Bakshu fonai, seek me out. Why aren't you seeking me out? Minayin afilu echad sheshchina beineihem. Who's the echad? There's only one. Excuse me. Where's the beineihem if there's only one? Where's the in-between? This is the in-between. Between you and that voice that's calling out and saying, Bakshu fonai. As Jung said very, very beautifully, consciousness exists in the space between two people. That's where consciousness exists. But there has to be the panim el panim. There has to be a face to face. This is at the epicenter of our avoda, the physical epicenter of our avoda in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. There were two kruvim. Vayishma es hakol mi bein shnei hakruvim. The voice is heard between the two kruvim, because this is literally a physical representation of the dynamic of how the Dvar Hashem exists. There has to be a beineihem. There has to be a group of people that are discussing Torah, and that's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows up. Elohim nitzav ba'ad asel. Okay, you don't have 10, then 5 is enough. You don't have 5, 3, good. You don't have 3, 2. But even one who hones in on that voice that's welling up from inside of him or her and gives it the time of day, that forms the two sides of the circuit, that there can be the Dvar Hashem between them. And this is the necessity of the need for separation. Lo yirani ha'adam v'chai. I didn't create you in order to be a carbon copy of me. I created you in order to be you. And the fact that you're you and I'm me, that allows the Shekhinah to be between us. That's what enables that paradigm to exist. Hilo yirani ha'adam v'chai. And I want you to be chai. I want you to live. I want you to be. And this is ultimately what runs through the rest of the entire Sefer. All of Sefer Shemos. That the Jewish people, they put up the masachim, they put up the masach, Pesach Sharei Chatzer, Masach HaOhel, they put up all the masachim. But not like the masach of the Egel, that was an aggressive wedge that was, shoved between them and God. It was the masach that allowed them to have the communion. It was the thing that enabled the communion. Uva'alos he'anan, and the cloud is something that obfuscates. You can't see through the cloud. That's the whole. What's another word for the cloud? An ov. What does ov mean? Thick. The thick thing, because you can't see through it. But that's the point. You're not meant to see through it. You're not meant to have complete clarity through it. If you can have complete, lo yirani ha'adam b'chai, there's meant to be an obfuscation. Because the fact that there's that little bit of separation that allows you to exist, it allows you to be independent. When the Anan came, the ultimate separation, that's the climax of the Sefer. That all the Masachim are put up, and the Anan is put up, and everything is put up, and that is when, as the Ramban says in the Hakdama to Sefer Shemos, that Chazal call this Sefer Sefer HaGeula, the Book of Redemption. Why is it called the Book of Redemption? So says the Ramban, people think it's because of Yetzias Mitzrayim, they were redeemed from Egypt. But Yetzias Mitzrayim only takes up like the first 3 parshios. The rest of the parshios are about the Mishkan, and about the Egel, and about the... Right? Geula, says the Rambam, Shechozru l'ma'alas avoseim, that they would achieve the spiritual state of their forefathers. And indeed, through this whole experience, they finally are able to go back to what it was like by Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, and Rachel, and Leah, that the divine presence rested on their tents. The Anan rested on their tents. This is when they're able to achieve that. And Bezrat Hashem, through communing with these Shalosh Esrei Midos Harachamim, being aware of the Drachav U'Fi'olosav, it is possible to achieve this anivos, this divine humility, which simultaneously allows us to have that V'tachsireu me'at me'Elohim, in order so that we can assert ourselves with our own subjective agency to be Mekayim B'diglu Alai Ava.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.